Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, 64a, top of the page with the words Emalach Rabbanan Svirale. I could say to you that he holds, in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, that the entire animal should be flayed. Inami, Ad kan lo yikoma Rabbi Shmuel b'noi Rabbi Yochanan b'roiko hosam אלא דאיתעביד לצורך גבוה ולא יצורך אכול שבוס, אבל הוכו דלא יתעביד לצורך גבוה וצריך לאכול שבוס אם הקרבן סביר עליהם. Alternatively, it is possible that Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, states his ruling only there in the case of the Paschal offering, where the requirements for the Most High, being the temple service, have been fulfilled, and therefore there is no need to desecrate the Shabbat. But here, where the community must bring a select tenth of an ephah, and therefore the requirements for the Most High have not been fulfilled, and it is necessary to desecrate the Shabbat, say that he holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, that one reaps the same amount of barley on Shabbat as during the week. Ela amar Rabbo Rabbi Shmuel ben Chanina v'sgan kohanim amru davar echad etnan. Rabbi Chanina sgan hakohanim omer b'Shabbos niktzar b'yochid b'magal echad u'bekupa achat u'bechol בשלוש קופos ושלוש מגלות. וחכמים אומרים אחד שבס ואחד חול ושלוש קופos ושלוש מגלות. Rather, Rabbah said, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Chanina, the deputy high priest, said the same thing. As we learned in the Mishnah, that Rabbi Chanina, the deputy high priest, says on Shabbat, the barley was reaped by an individual with one sickle and with one basket into which the barley was placed. And during the week, it was reaped by three people with three baskets and with three sickles. And the rabbis say both on Shabbat and during the week, it was reaped by three people with three baskets and with three sickles. Mi lo ka'amar Rabbi Chanina sgan hakohanim hasam kivan de'efshar lo tachinan hachanami kivan de'efshar lo tachinan. The Gemara explains Rabbah's comparison. Doesn't Rabbi Chanina, the deputy high priest, say there, with regard to the process of gathering the barley, that since it is possible to reap by means of one person, we do not exert ourselves to reap it by means of three? Here too, Rabbi Ishmael maintains that since it is possible to bring the Omer meal offering from 3 se'ah of barley, we do not exert ourselves on Shabbat to bring it from 5 se'ah. Mimai Dilma ad kan lo kama Rabbi Ishmael hacha ela deleka parsu milsa aval hosom liika parsu milsa ema kirabanan svirale. The Gemara rejects this comparison. From where is this conclusion reached? From where is this conclusion reached? Perhaps Rabbi Ishmael states his ruling only here because there is no greater publicity of the event achieved by using 5 se'ah rather than 3. But there, in the case of reaping the barley, where there is greater publicity of the event through the involvement of more people, one can say that he holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. Inami ad kan lo yikoma Rabbi Chanina sgan hakohanim hasam di b'chad di b'shloish tzorech gavoa misavin kilchoso אבל לא לא יסבין kilchoso tzorech gavoa ema k'rabanan svir lehem. Alternatively, perhaps Rabbi Chanina, the deputy high priest, states his ruling only there, as whether one individual or three people reap, the rite is still being performed in its proper manner for the requirement of the Most High. But here, when only 3 se'ah are used, and the rite is not being performed in its proper manner for the requirement of the Most High, as 5 se'ah are usually needed, say that he holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, that on Shabbat the mitzvah is performed in the same manner as on a weekday. Ela Omer Rav Ashi, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, Amro, Davar Echad, T'nan, Bein Shenira Be'alil, Ubein Shelo Nira Be'alil, Michalelin Lo B'Es HaShabbos. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Im Nira Be'alil, Ein Michalelin Lo B'Es HaShabbos. Rather, Rav Ashi said, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi said the same thing. As we learned in the Mishnah, Rosh Hashanah 21b, whether the new moon was seen clearly by everyone or whether it was not seen clearly, one may desecrate the Shabbat in order to testify about its appearance. Rabbi Yossi says if the moon was clearly seen, witnesses may not desecrate the Shabbat for it, as other witnesses located nearer to the court will certainly testify. If these distant witnesses go to court to testify, they will desecrate the Shabbat unnecessarily. Mi lo amar Rabbi Yossi Hasam, kevan de'efshar lo tachinan, achanami kevan de'efshar lo tachinan. The Gemara explains Rav Ashi's comparison. Didn't Rabbi Yossi say there, since it is possible to receive testimony about the new moon without further witnesses, we do not exert ourselves and travel on Shabbat. Here too Rabbi Yishmael holds that since it is possible to bring the Omer meal offering from 3 se'ah of barley, we do not exert ourselves on Shabbat to bring it from 5 se'ah. Mi mai dilma adkan leikoma Rabbi Yishmael hacha ela delekadim says ata machshir lo silavoi avalas nimtes ata machshir lo silavoi ema karabanan sirale. The Gemara rejects this comparison. From where do you draw this conclusion? Perhaps Rabbi Yishmael states only here that 3 se'ah are brought on Shabbat, and as there is no concern that ultimately you will cause people to stumble in the future and refrain from bringing the Omer offering. But there, in the case of witnesses testifying about the new moon, he concedes that all potential witnesses may travel on Shabbat, because if not, you will cause them to stumble in the future. People will say, why should we go to such trouble as our testimonies are necessary? Yet at some point they will be needed, and no witnesses will come to the court. Therefore, in that case, one can say that Rabbi Yishmael agrees with this reasoning and holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. Inam yad kan lekom Rabbi Yossi Hasam ela delegat tzorech gavoa. V'lo nitna Shabbos lidchois. Aval hocha de'ika tzorech gavoa v'nitna Shabbat lidchot. Ema kirabanan svirle. Alternatively, it is possible that Rabbi Yossi states his ruling only there with regard to the new moon, as this is not a requirement for the Most High, and therefore Shabbat may not be desecrated. But here, as the Omer meal offering is a requirement for the Most High, and therefore Shabbat may be desecrated for it, say that Rabbi Yossi holds it according to the opinion of the rabbis, that on Shabbat the mitzvah is performed in the same manner as on a weekday. Itmar, we learned, it was stated in a Braita, to Sefta Pesachim 5-7, Shachat shtei chatois shel tzibo, ve'en otzach elachas Omer Rabba v'yitema Rabbi Ami, chayav al shniya batur al rishonim, afilu nischap eloi v'shniya, afilu nitzes rishonim v'chusha. If one mistakenly slaughtered 2 communal sin offerings, for example, the goat offerings of a festival, on a festival that occurred on Shabbat, and only one was required, Rabbah said, and some say it was Rabbi Ami who said he is liable for the second, superfluous communal sin offering, but is exempt for the first. And this is the halacha, even if he achieved atonement with the second offering. For example, if the blood of the first offering was spilled after the slaughter of the second. And this is the halacha, even if the first offering was found to be gaunt and thereby disqualified as an offering, which meant that only the second offering was fit. Umi amar Rabba hachi, amar Rabba, hayu lefano shtei chatois achas, shmenu yachas kechusha shachat, shmenu yachas kach shachat kechusha chayav kechusha v'achar kach Shmeina Potter Lo Od. The Gemara asks that in the case where the first animal was found to be gone, did Rabbah really say this? But doesn't Rabbah say that if one had before him two communal sin offerings on Shabbat, one choice animal, one gaunt, and he slaughtered the choice one and then slaughtered the gaunt one, he is liable for the gaunt animal as it should not have been slaughtered. But if he first slaughtered the gaunt one and subsequently slaughtered the choice animal, he exempt for slaughtering the choice animal. And moreover, members of the court say to him, after he slaughtered the gaunt animal, bring the choice animal and slaughter it ab initio, which means l'chatchila. If so, in a case where the first animal was found to be gaunt, he certainly should not be liable for slaughtering the second. The Gemara answers, if you wish, say, remove the clause with regard to the gaunt animal from the first statement of Rabbah. In other words, Rabbah merely said that he is exempt for the slaughter of the first animal. He did not state a ruling about the second animal. And if you wish, say instead that the ruling that he is liable for the slaughter of the second animal was stated by Rabbi not Rabbah. Amar le Ravin Rav Ashi did say Sarishon Yehoshua bivnei me'ayin mahu basar machshavto az linon v'gavra lisua kamuchavin oidilma basar ma'asav az linon. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, if the first offering is found to be gaunt, meaning weakened in its intestines after it was slaughtered, what is the halacha? Do we follow his intention and hold him accountable? And this man who was unaware at the time of its slaughter that the first animal was gaunt, indeed to transgress the Shabbat prohibition by slaughtering the second offering, or perhaps we follow his actions and exempt him from liability as the first offering had been disqualified when he brought the second. Amar le Lavaynu derabba yitma shema shetavatina koyam uparas mitzudo dalois dogim v'hali dogim chayav v'hali dogim v'tinok Rava Amar chayav v'Rava Amar patur. This is an interesting case. Rav Ashi says, Ravina, isn't this the same as a case subject to disagreement between Rabbah and Rava? And in fact, both agree that in this case he's liable, as was stated. If one heard that a child was drowning at the sea, and he spread a net to raise fish, and the result was that he raised only fish, he is liable for transgressing the Shabbat prohibition of trapping. If he intended to raise fish, and he raised both fish and the child, Rava says he is liable, as his intention was to transgress a prohibition. And Rava says he is exempt, as his act saved a life and was therefore permitted on Shabbat. Even if he intended? If he intended to raise fish, he raised both the fish and the child, Rava says he's liable still. Interesting. And Rava says he is exempt as his act saved a life and was therefore permitted on Shabbat. Ad kan Rabba lo kapato ela kiv neshama amrina namidaiti atinok aval lo shmamina lo. The Gemara explains why everyone would agree that one is liable in the case involving two offerings, and Rabba deemed him exempt only there, since the one who spread the net heard the child had fallen in. Do you save a child with a net? You couldn't save a child with a net like that. That's just totally not practical. If a child fell in, you jump in and you swim down there and you find it. You're not going to find it with a net. You spread the net. You're just waiting there, Let's just wait till the child just floats in the net. It totally does it. It's totally not. Okay, but had he heard? And Rabbah deemed him exempt only there, since the one who spread the net had the child fallen in, and therefore we say that his intention in spreading the net was also to save the child, but had he not heard that the child fell in, he would not be exempt. This is comparable to the case of two offerings where he could not have known before its slaughter that the first animal had weak intestines. Vigad Amri, Amar Le Hainu, Pluktayu, the Rabba Virove, Diesma Shama Shetavatinuk Bayam. I heard that a tinok drowned in the sea. Shama 1409. Shama Shetavatinuk Bayam Uparas. Mitzudana Lois Dogim Ben Dogim Chayav. Ahalois Dogim Ben Tinok Vidogim. Rabba Amar Pater, Rabba Amar Chayav, Rabba Amar Pater, Zil Basar Maisav, Rabba Amar Chayav, Zil Basar Machshavto. And there are those who say that Rav Ashi said to Ravina conclusively, this is subject to disagreement between Rabba and Rava, as it was stated, if one heard that the child was drowning at sea, and he spread a net to raise fish, and the result was that he raised only fish, he is liable for transgressing the Shabbat prohibition of trapping. If he intended to raise fish, and he raised both fish and the child, Rava says he is liable, and Rava says he's exempt. Rav Ashi holds that Rava did not exempt him because he heard that his child was drowning. Rather, Rava says that he is exempt because one follows his actions, whereas Rava says that he is liable because one follows his intention. Consequently, the same dispute applies to the case of two offerings. Amar Rabba choyle she'amduhu legroi geres achas v'rotzo asor b'nei adam v'eviu asor groi grois b'vas achas beturin afilu b'zeh achar zeh afilu kadam b'ivri b'rishona. The Gemara continues its discussion concerning performing extra prohibited labor on Shabbat in extenuating circumstances where the desecration of Shabbat is allowed. Rabba says, with regard to a dangerously ill person on Shabbat, whom the doctors evaluated as needing to eat one fig to regain his health, and 10 men ran, and each cut and brought 10 figs simultaneously. Each one, they are all exempt from liability for transgressing the prohibition of reaping on Shabbat. This applies even in a case where the 10 come after one after the other, and even if the ill person had already recovered his health by eating the first fig. Okay? Boy Rava choyle she'amduhu l'shtei goyrois v'yesh shtei goyrois b'shtei uktzin sholish be'okez echa achas hai minayu mai sinan shtei mai sinan dechazulei o dilma delo mai sinan dika matal ketzira. Rava raises a dilemma. In the case of a dangerously ill person on Shabbat, whom the doctors evaluated as needing to eat 2 figs to regain his health, and there are 2 figs attached to a tree by 2 stems, and another 3 figs attached to the tree by 1 stem, which of them do we bring? We bring 2 figs as that is the amount that is fit for him, meaning this is the number of figs the ill person needs. Or perhaps we bring 3 figs as though he only requires 2, it serves to limit the labor of reaping. It's only breaking 1 vine. As the 3 figs are attached to the tree from a single stem, but you don't need the 3rd fig. Pshita, the Gemara answers, it is obvious that we bring the 3 figs. Really? 64b. De'ad kan. Okay, well, let's finish the idea. De'ad kan loy kamar Rabbi Yishmael Hosam ela dechi mimayit v'chila kam mimayit katsiro. Aval hocha dekam mimayit v'chila kam mapsho katsiro avadei shulim maisinon. As Rabbi Yishmael states, it's only there in the Mishnah that 3 sa'ah of barley are reaped on Shabbat, as in that case, when one limits the amount of available for eating, he likewise limits the amount for reaping, but here, when one limits the amount of eating by bringing the 2 figs, he also increases the amount of reaping. Therefore, it is certain that we bring the ill person the 3 figs attached by a single stem. Okay, that's the Talmud. And the Mishnah will start on the next, which is 64b, in the next video. Bezras Hashem.